In old Japan, a parlor game called the HyakumonogatariKaidankai was popular among the samurai warrior class as a way to summon spirits from the other world. Although it is believed that this game was simply used by samurai as a test of courage, some still say that it was, and is, a genuine occult ritual that can summon potentially dangerous spirits if completed. Over time, the popularity of the game spread from the aristocratic samurai to the working-class peasants and townspeople that made up most of the island nation. By the time that the peaceful Edo period rolled around, this simple game, once exclusively used by samurai to test each other's courage, had become known all across Japan and played by people of all social classes. The rules of HyakumonogatariKaidankai, roughly translated into English as a gathering of 100 weird tales, were simple, despite its somewhat complicated setup. The game requires a table with a mirror, 100 paper lanterns or candles, and some very creative people to play with. The number of players can go all the way up to 100, but never more. A particularly brave or foolhardy soul can even attempt to play it by themselves. However, this isn't recommended. A game of HyakumonogatariKaidankai must take place at night in an L-shaped space with 2 or preferably 3 rooms adjacent to one another. The table with a mirror on it is placed at the center of the furthest room and surrounded by the 100 paper lanterns or candles. Since traditional Japanese doors were made of very thin rice paper, the light of the candles or lanterns in the furthest room will still be visible from the unlit first room, where the majority of the players would be seated at any given moment. The game is played by having each of the players take turns telling a story of strange or supernatural happenings. These stories could be anything, from local folk tales from the storyteller's hometown, to wholly original works of fiction framed as a true story, or even personal accounts of something strange that had happened to the storyteller themselves. Whatever the story may be, once the player has finished telling their story, they are to leave the first room and walk to the furthest room, where the mirror and candles are arranged. There they must snuff out one of the candles or lanterns and gaze deeply into the mirror placed on the table without touching it. The player then makes their way back to the first room, where another player would tell their own story, and repeat the process until all 100 lights have been snuffed out. As every candle or lantern is snuffed out, the veil between the human and spirit world grows thinner and thinner. Ghosts and spirits will become drawn to the site of the ritual as darkness slowly envelops the rooms. Upon snuffing out the final light source, players are no longer protected from the spirit world and may be paid a visit by all manner of supernatural beings. Nobody is certain what is supposed to happen afterwards, except that it's something terrible. Some say that the spirits summoned by the ritual will haunt the players of the game for 30 uninterrupted days. Others believe that the ritual will specifically summon a spirit named Aundan, a female spirit dressed in a white kimono with sharp teeth, long black hair, and 2 horns protruding from her head. Aundan is often described as having an eerie, bluish glow surrounding her, and can be considered the Japanese equivalent of Bloody Mary. Most of the time, the players of HyakumonogatariKaidankai will stop just before reciting the 100th story to spare themselves whatever fate awaited them should they complete the ritual. At this point, they would have most likely succeeded in scaring themselves anyway, so there was little point in continuing if it meant potentially getting haunted. This was not always the case, however. Some games of HyakumonogatariKaidankai are properly finished, with the 100th candle getting snuffed out. One such case happened near the end of the Edo period, shortly before the Meiji Restoration rapidly modernized Japan and stripped away power from the superstitions that fueled HyakumonogatariKaidankai. A group of 10 friends, nobles of the court, were playing HyakumonogatariKaidankai in a high-class theater owned by the elder brother of the host. Little did the players know at the time that they were all being set up for an elaborate trick. The host's elder brother, a mischievous young man who delighted in pranking his younger brother, laid in wait beneath the floorboards of the theater. There he waited for the players to take their turns telling their stories, and listened as they all became more and more anxious of the darkness encroaching nearer with every extinguished flame. When it was time for the final story, told by the host himself, the mischievous elder brother prepared to strike. He put on the frightening mask of a Hanya, a vengeful demon which often featured in traditional Japanese theater, and waited with bated breath for his brother to blow out the final candle. The moment the host returned to the first room after extinguishing the last light, he burst out from under the floorboards in his demonic guise and screamed at the terrified players with a voice fit for a true demon of hell. The players, including the host, all fled in sheer terror from the monster they thought they'd summoned. Once they had all left the theater, the mischievous elder brother let out a hearty cackle, satisfied with his most amazing trick yet. But when he tried to remove the hideous Hanya mask from his face, he found that it was stuck. The mask itself had become fused to his skin, becoming a permanent part of his face. Try as he might, he couldn't remove it even after attempting to pry it off with a sharp knife. He's still out there to this day, trapped in between this world and the spirit world, constantly yearning for a death that will never come. He still plays pranks on humans to alleviate his boredom on nights where the veil between worlds is thin, though his pranks have become much more malicious since that fateful night. On that night, the ritual did not summon a spirit, but created a new one instead. One that might just appear if anyone is foolish enough to complete the ritual once more.
If you like these scary stories, remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Anyway, you won't be escaping from the fear zone.